Welcome, everyone. I'm Spiro. Thanks for tuning in. I'm sure you've all seen and heard about the civil unrest sparking across the country in response to the recent police killing of George Floyd, where Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin kneeled on Floyd's neck for several minutes until he passed away, despite pleas from witnesses to remove his knee from Floyd's neck, who was clearly not resisting and posed no threat at that time as he lay face down in the street. Now, joining me to talk more about this situation and its aftermath as it's continuing to unfold is Dabu7, who is an independent journalist with almost 1 million subscribers across his various social media platforms. Very popular content you put out there, Dabu. Now, last night we were watching some very wild scenes from the live streams from around the country as of protests and rioting and looting takes place. Now, you have a lot of experience of being on the streets during civil unrest as a journalist and live streaming these events. So far from what we've been seeing unfold, what is your take? Are these protests with massive amounts of people just sparking spontaneously, or is there something more going on here?
You know, history has showed me that there's always been some kind of element that they've shipped in, especially the places I've been to, Ferguson's, Baltimore's, Cleveland's. We've seen a lot of George Soros type of activity, as we call it, where paid protesters would be on the ground, so much so that they would even be cutting the checks and showing you the checks. So we knew that that element was there, and we busted them. This time, I think what they're doing is they're capitalizing on a lot of really homegrown anger. A lot of people have been pent up, ticked off about the lockdowns, want to release some anger, and I think that there's a mix. I think that you've got the organics, but then when you send in the provocateurs, it gets murky. It muddies the waters. You know, then it becomes chaos. And I think that somewhere like Minneapolis is ground zero right now with the George Floyd thing. But Louisville was hot last night too. It's got its own situation. Breonna Taylor, she was shot by police in her apartment and killed in March. A lot of people highly upset about that. And it's just another police shooting situation where people are not happy. So I look to get on the ground there tonight, at least in Louisville, and get us some action and get some answers, hopefully as well.
Right. Now, you will be, as you just mentioned, traveling to Louisville. You'll be live streaming there on the ground. We're going to provide links. Where are you going to be live streaming from? Like which platform?
DLive.
The DLive. Okay, so we're going to leave links there to DLive so you can be, people can watch your streams, your feeds there. As you stated, you have a lot of experience being on the ground. You were in Baltimore, you were in Ferguson, you have had face-to-face with the state police in their riot control, and also with the National Guard. What has been your experience between the two? Is there any difference that you've noticed between the two?
Yes. With the police, man, there's always been this kind of built-in aggression personally that I've seen out there. With the National Guard, anytime I've encountered them, they've always pulled back. It's really kind of weird. I had the sense that when I was standing in front of all these people, the police were ready to jump on us, you know, hitting their hands with their nightsticks. When the National Guard came in and were finally right in front of us, especially in Ferguson, they pulled back and were like, we're not doing this. You know, every man's different. Every man listens to orders different. But in those occasions, I seen that in the hearts of the National Guard, they weren't willing to just beat on their people for no reason. They had to have a very valid excuse. There had to be mayhem breaking loose. They saw us with cameras and everything and was like, this is ridiculous. So it's two different mindsets. Both took an oath to serve and protect us. But really, I see the valor in the National Guard, and I don't see it in the police many times in the streets. Not to say that there's not any good cops out there, because we know there are. But in this situation, it's gotten out of control. I think that the police need an example made out of them. They do it with any other criminal, right? They hang them out to dry, send them to prison, make an example out of someone. Make an example out of a cop one time, so maybe the rest of them don't think they can get away with all this crap. You know? And people want justice.
That's right. And the police officers that were involved in George Floyd's death, his murder that was filmed. That's on video. The video went viral, and after it went viral, 4 police officers were immediately fired from the police force. We've seen some strange stuff kind of come out in the days since his death, since Floyd's death. And a lot of people are wondering, why aren't these men in jail? Why haven't there been charges pressed? And yes, rightfully so, people do want to see justice. But that doesn't mean necessarily taking to the streets and burning down your neighborhoods. But some of the strange things that we've seen is that this police officer had worked as a bouncer at security at the same club that Floyd worked at.
Stunning new revelation from the former owner of a South Minneapolis club. She's telling 5 Investigates that George Floyd and former officer Derek Chauvin both worked security for her at El Nuevo Rodeo out on Lake Street. Investigative reporter Eric Rasmussen just spoke with that woman. He's here now with more on what she said. Eric?
Jackie, to be clear, while Maya Santa Maria says the 2 men worked for her as recently as last year, she says she does not know if Derek Chauvin and George Floyd ever actually spoke to each other.
So what is your take, on why haven't there been charges pressed on this? We've seen video from this police officer's neighbor saying that they didn't even know he was a cop and they lived next to him for years. Some weird stuff going on.
Yeah, that's really weird. I mean, I watched the mayor come out and he said, we're going to get justice. This guy's going to jail. I expected by today that cop would be served. He would be arrested. Where is he? That's the big question. A lot of people are going to continue taking to the streets, I think, until they see that this man has been arrested.
Do you think that that will quell the protests and the rioting? Do you think that'll kind of put an end to the unrest we've seen on the streets if they do start making some arrests?
Well, that's kind of a tricky one. I think that it'd definitely start the process. It'd ease a lot of things. But if you've got George Soros minions out there running around again, getting paychecks, none of that matters. They're going to keep on going on. So that's something to pay attention to. I feel that the people that do get their justice and start to calm down, you'll see that. I think then the provocateurs will start to stand out a little more.
Now, we did see a tweet from Candace Owens stating that the Minneapolis police chief just confirmed that many of the protesters that are burning down the city are not from Minneapolis themselves. She states that her best guess is that it's Antifa, type of an operation, and we have seen Black Lives Matter out there, and we know that Soros has been involved in funding both of those operations, and you've had direct experience with both of those operations. What has been your experience on the ground with these different groups?
Well, Antifa and Black Lives Matter, they seem to operate a lot under the same tactics. What I do know is they've got some of their own roll calls. And from being out in the streets, right there next to them and seeing it many times, I know that when I hear hands up, don't shoot, and all the same Black Lives Matter slogans, they're Black Lives Matter slogans. So when the guy's running the streets with the bullhorn, there you go again. He's got a bullhorn. These are the same things we witnessed all these people getting trained on how to use the bullhorn, how to trained on how to lead the people down the streets, how to keep them calm, how to speak to them, how to do all these things, and to keep chanting these same slogans. And what I'm hearing in a lot of these places are Black Lives Matter slogans. Plus, I've already got confirmation on the ground out of California and Minneapolis that they're there. So that's no surprise. I expect to probably see them in Louisville when I get there here this afternoon. And I'm going to be creeping around trying to find buses. They bus them in, they bring them in. We're trying to find all that good stuff. But I will say this. Last night it got kind of crazy in Louisville. 7 people shot. It kind of raises the bar. It's not just protesting non-lethals anymore. I mean, there were 7 people randomly shot right there in the middle of the crowd. So it raises the bar in terms of security and heightened alert. So.
Absolutely. Well, it's no joke. It is dangerous being out there, as we've seen. And I know that this information just came out recently about the 7 people being shot. Do we know anything about the shootings? Who was doing the shootings, or the victims, or anything like that?
What I do know as of right now is that it looked to be very random. There's no suspect that's been arrested as of right now. on video, you can hear the thing unfold in front of the steps of one of the buildings. You can hear it go pop, 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 pop. It sounds like 7 or 8 shots. 7 people were shot. Taking all that in, it almost seems like someone came in real quick and just randomly was like pop, 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 and then took off. And that's pretty much what happened.
Very concerning. Now, we've also seen some evidence that would indicate already some type of agent provocateur, basically initiating kind of provoking, starting looting and damaging, rioting type activities. Can you explain a little bit, what we have seen specifically with the AutoZone incident?
Well, AutoZone just seemed to be the classic of exactly what you said. I've seen this before in the past. I've seen it in Ferguson, seen it up in Milwaukee. And it always, Black Lives Matter and provocateurs were on the ground. I've been very hard pressed to find any locals, anytime, anywhere, that burn down their own liquor store or their own AutoZone that they're working at or they depend on. It's just not how it usually goes down. They are more focused on directing their energy toward the authorities there. I see more wildness coming from the guys bust in because it's like they're sent there to do that. So they're there, now they're going to do it. And last night it really looked like Minneapolis in some parts, the whole city was on fire. It was crazy, some of those shots.
It certainly was. And, we had seen footage of the police basically evacuating their department there, their precinct. The 3rd precinct, that's right. And then later it was ransacked and set on fire and burned for hours.
Yeah. They're lucky that didn't go to the ground, and they were warning that there could be explosions from that because they had ammunitions in there still, flashbangs and all that. So, anytime that you get people that can run the police out of a precinct, that speaks volumes. It's a very powerful move, but it has to be done in the right way here. Cannot be allowing big moves to be made and then being made unrighteously in this country. We need to be doing things the legitimate way, the best we can. And as I always say, burning down the liquor store and the AutoZone is doing nothing to help the situation. It's not bringing talk to the table, no dialogue, nothing. So we need to be going down that avenue as well. Instead of just wiling out.
Now, President Trump did respond with some tweets that actually have been censored now by Twitter. But what do you think is going to be the response as the violence continues to escalate and as the damage continues to escalate and increase?
Ultimately, my biggest fear is always this blue helmets. I don't want to see them in here. And I know that if the police can't get it done and the National Guard comes in and ultimately doesn't want to do it in certain ways and do exactly what they want them to do, then they'll call in backup. And that's the last thing that I want to see here is an excuse set to bring in international help or anything like that.
Yeah, I would imagine things would have to get pretty bad. Many people would resist that, but even having the National Guard on the street is one step away from having the actual military on the street, which is unconstitutional. They're not supposed to be allowed to do that under posse comitatus. But we're already halfway through 2020, and this is shaping up to be a wild year, and I think that things are only just getting started, unfortunately, as the summer continues. And this is a trend that we've seen over the last several summers, that these groups have been taking to the streets, and of course the media and these groups themselves are trying to make it about race or make it about politics, left, right, or police versus the people, when ultimately this has shades of color revolutions and destabilization programs to pit us all against each other. Meanwhile, we're all victims of this same system of oppression that is affecting all of us. So, Dabu, I really appreciate the work that you're doing and getting down there on the ground, because it is up to independent journalists like yourself and the many others out there who are doing good work, who are on the ground, providing us with, information straight from the source. We can't rely upon the mainstream media at this point, who does, obviously is corrupt and bought off and has an agenda of their own that plays right into this. Do you have any final points you'd like to make today, Dabu?
I just preach unity and love, and that be smart about your actions, guys, and be there for one another. It's trying times, and we're in this together. Yeah. So it's a team effort. I thank everyone out there fighting the good fight. Thank you.
Well said. Thanks so much for being my guest, Dabu. I know you're busy. You're getting ready to hit the road.
Thank you for all your work, son. You've been smoking it. I love it. I love you, brother.
Much love, Dabu. I'll be watching your streams tonight and promoting them on Twitter. If you guys are not on Twitter yet, this is an incredible source of information to get it as it's unfolding, as it's happening. I'm going to leave links for all of Dabu's channels, including DLive, his Twitter account, and his multiple YouTube channels. We'll be watching tonight. Stay safe, brother, out there, and we'll be talking again very soon.
Much love. Thank you.
There have been multiple developments since I had Dabu7 on this morning, and the first major development, which is breaking news, is that former police officer seen in the video with his knee on the neck of George Floyd, which ultimately killed Mr. Floyd, has in fact been arrested and taken into custody. Now, I'm not sure exactly what took so long, but he is formally being charged with third-degree murder and manslaughter, and the county attorney did say that there may be additional charges coming at a later date. Now, the family has since issued a statement in response to these charges and saying, quote, "The arrest of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin for the brutal killing of George Floyd is a welcome but overdue step on the road to justice." The statement continues, "We expected a first-degree murder charge. We want a first-degree murder charge, and we want to see the other officers arrested. We call on authorities to revise the charges to reflect the true culpability of this officer," end quote. Now, we will see what effect, if any, this arrest has on the civil unrest that is spreading across the country and is being capitalized upon by organizations like Black Lives Matter, which have been exposed in the past for being paid protesters by the Open Society Foundation and the likes of George Soros. Now, in another update, the man seen in this video smashing out the windows at AutoZone, which Dabu7 and I discussed earlier in this report, is rumored to be a St. Paul police officer. Now, this is a rumor, and I have not been able to verify this 100%, but I wanted to put the information out there. That way people are aware of it and they can investigate it, because this does absolutely need to be investigated. There's quite a bit of speculation involved here and some circumstantial evidence which suggests that this man in this video may in fact be a St. Paul police officer. Now, this would be a prime example of an agent provocateur inciting violence. This absolutely needs to be investigated. As you can see here in this video, the locals are actually appearing to try to stop the man, and are even asking him if he is a cop.
Guy just came with a hammer and smashed the windows.
I'm gonna fight you right now.
You wanna go? What's up? Somebody hold my blunt.
Hey!
Somebody hold my blunt. I'm gonna give it up. Hey! Are you a fucking cop? What's up?
And the final update for this report is that the U.S. federal government is currently flying a military Reaper drone over Minneapolis, operated by U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, to conduct surveillance over the city as the civil unrest continues. Now, I will always encourage people to exercise their rights. I also implore each and every one of you to please be smart. Do not engage in violence. Yes, you do have the right to defend yourself and your family and even your property, and you have every right to protest, and to hell with the lockdowns. But please be aware that as the COVID story begins to fall apart, this is a very convenient crisis that all eyes are now on this new crisis for the time being. And it certainly appears at this point that this is a well-organized operation, a nationwide operation, and I do not personally, at this point in time, believe that this is organic or completely spontaneous. I believe that this may just be the next phase in a much larger operation. That is speculation on my part, based on my research throughout history, based on people like who we just spoke to with Dabu7, who has been on the ground, and many others who have exposed that these operations to incite civil unrest, which we have seen take place in many other countries around the world under the guise of Gladio type operations, or even color revolutions, destabilization operations to foment and create civil unrest, especially in an election year, while all this other crises are taking place. Now, please be safe out there. Make sure you tune in tonight to Dabu7's live stream on DLive, live from the streets of Louisville, Kentucky. last night, unfortunately, 7 people were shot during the protest there in Louisville. I'm going to be watching. Be sure to follow me on Twitter and BitChute, especially Twitter right now, because I'm going to be updating throughout this process. We found some very interesting stuff take place last night. And make sure you follow Dabu7 on D Live. Stay tuned for more. I'm Spiro. Thanks for watching.